Welcome to Just Energy Radio with your host, naturopath and medical intuitive, Dr. Rita Louise. We have learned from Einstein's theory that matter and energy are one. Physicists believe that all systems in nature have their own particular way of vibrating. From the swinging of a pendulum to the waves of the ocean to the light that brightens the sky each day, each of these oscillates at its own unique rate. The same holds true for every thought, feeling, event, or word we speak. Each has its own frequency or rate of vibration. What many of us don't realize is when we take everything in our universe down to its simplest form, it is all just energy. Join Dr. Rita Louise on a journey through time and space where past, present, and future collide. Today, what you believe may be called into question. What we want to know is, who made up the rules? Be brave and step outside the box. We are about to turn our world upside down and venture into the unknown. Hold on. We are departing our own beliefs and entering alternative realms. Enjoy the possibilities.
Hello and welcome to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for tuning into the show today. Another great guest. We're going to be speaking to Ellen Evert Hopman, about being pagan, Druids, Wiccans, and witches today. Just Energy Radio is brought to you by soulhealer.com, where you can find out about all the products and services I offer, including medical intuition evaluations, energy healing, and psychic readings. So if there are things going on in your life, you have problems at work, problems in your relationship, you have issues with your health, give me a call, send me an email, and we can set up a time for a private consultation in person, over the phone, or via Skype. It's also brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics. That's www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com, where you can jumpstart your intuition today with our free 50-page guide. If you missed an episode of Just Energy Radio, there are multiple places that you can check it out. You can listen to it in our archives at www.justenergyradio.com. While you're on the website, please sign up for our weekly newsletter to keep you informed of who's coming up on the show. You can also go to the Just Energy Radio page on YouTube. That's Just Energy Radio on YouTube. You can listen to it on iTunes and here on the Inception Radio Network. Couple of quick announcements. Let's see. In less than 2 weeks is the History, Haunts, and Legends Conference in spooky Jefferson, Texas. I'll be there speaking on intuition. I'll also be there doing private sessions. Something I just scheduled yesterday or today is I will be doing a psychic gallery in Gladewater, Texas, and that's scheduled for November 15th, Saturday. I'm just going to check my calendar. Yes, Saturday, November 15th. So if you want some more information about that, send me an email. I'll be getting it up on the RitaLouise.com site or the SoulHealer.com site very soon, probably tomorrow. Don't forget, get copies of Icon or download your copy of Icon, Deconstructing the Archetypes of Our Ancients, or get your copy of E.T. Chronicles from Amazon today. So let me tell you a little bit about our guest and get her on the air. Ellen Hopman is a master herbalist and lay homeopath who holds an MED in mental health counseling. Ellen is the author of a growing number of books. She has been a teacher of herbalism since 1983 and of Druidism since 1990. She has co-led tours to Celtic and Neolithic sites in Europe. She was the founder of the New England Druid Summit, a yearly gathering of Druids in New England. For more information, please visit her site, EllenEvertHopman.com. That's EllenEvertHopman.com. So please welcome to Just Energy Radio, Ellen Hopman. Hi, Ellen. How are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for having me.
And I just appreciate your patience with everything that's been going on around here. And I'm just so glad that you decided to stick with us and stay for the show. So thank you.
Well, there was an eclipse today. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Oh, yeah, it just seems like the world just gets crazier and crazier every day.
And that is true. We live in very interesting times.
I always ask myself, why did I sign up for this? You know, given the fact that, we're supposedly given a choice, and I'm thinking, what was I thinking?
Yes, what were you thinking?
I don't know. Having this be your first time on the show, why don't you kind of introduce yourself to the listeners and maybe share what got you interested in studying paganism and Druidism and herbal law?
Well, that's two different subjects in my mind anyway. What happened was I was born in Austria, and at the time that I was born, my mother, who is no longer on this side of the veil, she was an artist, and she was very interested in archaeology, and there were digs going on in the area. I was born in Salzburg. That's where The Sound of Music was filmed, in the mountains there. And they were digging up Celtic graves, and they were coming up with, these were the first artifacts that they were finding about the ancient Celts. And when I was very small, my mother used to talk about the Celts. And I thought that was perfectly normal. I thought everybody grew up that way. And she would always talk about them with profound respect. That's what I remember most, was the incredible tone of respect that she had. And she would talk about their ironwork, and I promptly forgot about it. And when I got older, she didn't talk about it anymore. And it actually wasn't until I was in my 30s, when I was living in Philadelphia at the time, and I heard Celtic music on the radio for the first time. I was just, channel surfing, and all of a sudden there was this Celtic music, and I instantly fell in love with it. And then I became a Cayley dancer in Philadelphia, and that's a traditional Irish dancing, group dancing, not the step dancing. But anyway, I love art history. I love history. So gradually I started getting more and more interested in the Celtic culture, and then I was practicing as an herbalist at the time, and one of my clients was a seamstress for the Flying Karamazov brothers, and she was telling me a story about how she had gone to a gathering and she had met a Druid. And when I heard the word Druid, some people have this epiphany when they hear the word witch. They go, oh, yeah, I'm a witch. I never had that experience. But when I heard the word Druid, I just, all of a sudden, it was like I knew that's what I had to look into. And I spent the next few years trying to find Druids, because that was in the early 80s. It was before there was the Internet. There was no way to just look up Druids. Although I do remember looking in the Yellow Pages and finding a Druid listed in the Philadelphia Yellow Pages, which I thought was interesting. And I did actually meet him. But that was the only thing you could do.
I find that kind of hard to believe, that there was a listing.
Yeah, well, he was a Druid, and he was in the phone book. So, but anyway, so she told me about Druids, and then I finally did find a Druid group, and it was called ADF, or Anriachtfein, and I was one of the first members. There were only 30 of us at the time. It was 1984, I guess, when I officially joined. And then there's a lot that happened after that, but I've been a Druid ever since. That's making a very long story short. So
no, you kept it actually pretty brief.
Yeah.
You use the word Druid, and I think there is so much confusion when talking about, and I'm going to call it earth-based spirituality. Can you explain, and please feel free to, spend time on this, because it's I think critical, but what the differences are, if there are any, between the concept of a Druid or pagan or Wiccan and witch, because I think they all kind of get thrown in together under the pagan / oh, you're a witch category. And I don't and this is even for my own edification, are there differences between the different titles and different groups, or are we all talking about the same thing?
Well, the word paganism is actually the umbrella term. It's kind of like Christianity could be anything from Lutherans to Baptists to Catholics to Orthodox, Russian Orthodox. They're all Christians, right? And that all falls under Christianity, right? Well, paganism is the umbrella term. And paganism is, a lot of people totally misunderstand that term, and the dictionaries are part of the problem, because in the dictionaries you'll still find pagan, a godless person, right? Which is exactly the opposite of what a pagan is. For example, Hindus are pagans. You could hardly call them godless people, right? They have many, many gods and goddesses. Well, it's the same thing with pagans. Pagans honor all religions, all traditions. We are polytheists. That doesn't mean that we don't have our own particular gods and goddesses that we like or that we work with or that we feel close to. But we would never say to another pagan, how dare you worship Astarte? That's the wrong path, and you must convert to the path of Apollo. We would never do that. It's considered, it's not even considered. I mean, it would be beyond the pale. It would just be absolutely unthinkable to do that. So to begin with, a pagan just means a non-Judeo-Christian Islamic person. In other words, we are not the people of the book. It's what the Muslims call the people of the book. It's the Bible and the Quran. So the Old Testament, New Testament, Quran, that's the people of the book. We are not the people of the book. And even the Bible talks about the other people. Cain and Abel, one of them went off and got married to somebody, and it was not a person of the book. We're the other people, and there's a lot of us. but yeah, that would include most indigenous traditions, Native American traditions, indigenous traditions, African traditions, Hinduism, and all the current pagan revival that's going on now in the U.S., Britain, all over the world. So to begin with, that's one thing that people need to look at. Then you have Druids, and in ancient times, Druids, and we are under the pagan umbrella, Druids were the intellectuals of the tribes. They were the people of arts. They were the lawyers, the judges, the doctors, the priests, the priestesses. That was the Druid. It was a caste. They're the equivalent of the Brahmins in Hindu society. And even today, most Druids are intellectual. We tend to be very widely read. We love reading really old documents, things we can get our hands on from the 7th century, and that's a Druid. Then you have Wicca, and Wicca is actually a traditional English witchcraft tradition with very strict training and rules. What gets confusing is a lot of pagans with very little training or education call themselves Wiccan now. But there's a big difference between what they call Gardnerian Wicca, which is really traditional English Wicca, which has a lot of training, and just your garden variety Wiccan, who's running around calling himself a Wiccan. And then you have witches. There are many different kinds of witches, but witchcraft, it's called witchcraft because it's a craft. And throughout the Middle Ages, most witches were Christian. So when they were burning witches, they were actually burning Christians. And it's just,
Oops.
Oops, yeah. And it's like all the Salem witches, quote unquote. They were all Christian, right? Mm-hmm. In Salem, Massachusetts, they were all Christians, right? So it's a craft, and it was just folk practices and healing methods and things that were passed down and practiced by mostly good Christian people, So I don't know if that helps
Well, I mean, it does help. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that what you're saying is if you're not Judeo-Christian, Islam, whatever, you're a pagan.
Right.
Dang, I guess I'm a pagan.
Well,
I didn't even know it.
Yeah, a lot of people are pagan. It's just people who revere the earth, who revere nature, as opposed to, like, in Islam, the highest goal of Islam, they say, La ilaha illallahu, only God is God, and that the whole earth is haram. The earth is forbidden, and your goal is to transcend the material plane and just think of Allah. That's Islam. Same thing with Christianity. The ultimate goal of Christianity is the cross and the resurrection. And what does that mean? It means leaving the earth, going to heaven. You know, what do they call it? The ascension. What do they call it when the rest of us get left behind? What do they call that? They have a term for that.
Oh, the rapture.
The rapture, yes. You're supposed to leave the earth, and then the rest of us get left behind. Well, those of us who are going to be left behind, see, our religion looks at nature, and we see the sacred and we see the divine in nature as well as in the sky. We don't just think about going to the sky. You know, we look at all the realms. We look at under the ground as sacred. Then we look at the things in the middle, you know, the trees, the herbs, the animals, the birds, the fish, the insects, the people. That's all sacred. The fire, the water, the air, it's all sacred. And then in the sky, we have the sky gods. But underground, we have the fairy realm and the ancestors. So it's all sacred for us. It's, you know, we're not trying to leave the earth as if that were a good thing. And that has a lot of implications. If more people recognized that the earth was sacred, maybe they wouldn't trash the earth so much, you know?
Well, and it's scary what is happening on the planet with the commercialism and the overforesting, overkilling. You know, it's just people don't even care. I mean, it's just about fracking. Money.
Yeah,
it's fracking.
All about greed. It's all about money, right? And I mean, even just our farming methods. You know, if you don't recognize that an animal has a soul and is sacred and is a sentient being. And in India, they recently declared that dolphins were sentient beings. So dolphins have rights. You know, we're slowly, as a species, humans are very slowly starting to come around. You know, you do have people like PETA. I'm not a member of PETA, but you do have people who are fighting for the rights of animals. The way we raise animals for food. I mean, I eat meat. I'm a meat eater. I like to buy free-range, organic, if at all possible, animals that it looks like they might have had a decent life, you know. The factory farming that we do, the way we treat animals, the way we treat the bees, the way we treat the crops. We spray everything with pesticide, and it's killing the bees and it's killing the butterflies. And I mean, I was hearing today that the number of barn swallows has dropped dramatically. So the birds are affected now. And the core of that, some people will say, I don't think everyone does, but some people will say that it goes back to biblical teaching, where it says that humans are supposed to have the whole earth. They're supposed to have dominion or something over the whole earth. And that a pagan would never say that, because we see the sacred within the bees, within the birds, within the animals, within the grain, you know, and those are the things that we try to think about.
I have my first, like, real garden this year, like, big. You know, if you're going to do it, go big. And people laugh at me because I go out every morning and I say hi to all my little vegetables and go, okay, grow. And you know, like, commute with them every day. And I fear that should work.
Oh, yeah. Well, Scientists are even showing this now, that that plants have nervous systems, and they can respond to pain, and I mean, they are sentient also. The thing is, we all die, so I don't really understand the argument of, well, you shouldn't eat meat because you're killing an animal, but then if you eat vegetables, you're also killing a being. You're killing a sentient being. So all these creatures, everybody, including us, we're all going to die. And it's a question of how much compassion do we have while the thing is alive, and how do we treat it? And I'm really glad that you're growing a garden, and I hope it's organic, right?
Is there any other way? And if I could actually get it to produce stuff other than these cherry-sized tomatoes on a plant that's supposed to grow these jumbo tomatoes and my little microscopic-sized peppers, I'd be a much happier girl, because you can't. I could go on and on and on and on, but I'm learning.
Yeah, are they getting enough water?
It was too hot. I planted a bunch of stuff in the middle of summer. Big mistake. Yeah. So I'm learning, don't plant stuff when it's 150 degrees out. They don't like it. It's I guess they don't like it. Sorry, plant. I gave them lots of water, and I talk to them every day. But anyway.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's interesting because to me, I talk to my pets, I talk to the other critters that are around, I talk to my plants, I talk to my crystals, I talk to anybody or anything, and they all, to me, there is consciousness, and I don't understand how people can be of the mentality that there is no consciousness, that there is no energy being exchanged between you and these living things. I don't get it.
Well, I think it all goes back to that core belief that you're supposed to transcend the earth, that the things that are on the earth don't matter. If you look at a forest, it's just a bunch of green stuff, It's perfectly okay to cut it down because it's just green stuff, and it's going to come back, and it's there for our use. That is a core mentality, as opposed to saying every tree is an individual being and they're all sacred. I have a saying that I use. I say every tree is a church for a Druid. And that is really true. Because when we're next to a tree, the roots go down to the underworld, the branches go up to the sky world, the trunk is in the middle. We can stand next to that tree and we're in church. Mm-hmm. That's literally how we feel. And then you get to know each individual tree, and each individual tree has a completely different personality. And the different species have different personalities. I've written whole books about this. I have a book called Druids Herbal of Sacred Tree Medicine, where I go into tree herbalism, and then I go into the individual properties and spiritual natures of all the different tree species,
And see, I don't even know that I would have ever thought to even think about that different species have different temperaments and characteristics.
Oh, they're completely different. For example, an apple tree, apples grow very low to the ground because they like to be in contact with humans. If you've ever had an apple tree, they do better when they're pruned. They want to be pruned. It's like roses. Roses also do very well when they're with humans. They want to be cut. They want to be, watered, nurtured, fed. They're very dependent on humans. There are other species that, like a giant fir, for example, or a sequoia, has very little need for us. They're way up in the sky. Their energy is up in the sky world, and we don't matter to them, at all. And oaks are very centered. The roots go down as deep as the tree is tall, so they're incredibly balanced. They're all different. Pine trees, they flop over very easily because their roots are shallow. So they're more.
What about
wind.
Pecan trees? Okay, I have a bunch of pecan trees in my backyard.
We don't have those in Massachusetts. You tell me, what's the nature of a pecan tree?
I don't know, but the squirrels sure like them, and they like throwing the pecans at you, which...
Well, the pecan tree, it seems like it likes to feed things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, oaks do that.
I mean, it does have a very nurturing feeling to it. I mean, that was one of the reasons we bought the property, was because I felt like I was back home.
Well, there you go. I mean, it seems to me that the pecan is really going out of its way to try to feed people and feed squirrels and provide food. You know, like maple trees go way out of their way. They will live in areas like polluted cities that would kill any other tree. A maple tree will survive, and it will produce a beautiful sap that humans can use, you know. They're very tolerant of humans, and they have a very loving sort of nature. Birch trees don't care about us that much. They have a whole different, you know, they're just much more aloof, you know. Yeah, it sounds like you answered your own question.
Yeah, well, it's that intuitive thing. It's like, I don't know, let me feel it. See, now I'm going to be walking around my whole yard going, ooh, let me feel you, tree.
Well, that's a really good thing to do. That's how you get to realize, and like you said, even every rock is alive. Every tree is alive. They all have consciousness. You can tune into a rock. It's an amazing thing to tune into a rock because they go back millions of years. And especially if you have issues, if you're dealing with something that happened in your life and you think it's so overwhelming, you go sit down with a rock. What do you think the rock's going to say?
I don't know.
The rock has seen it all. You know, they've seen it all. They've seen glaciers come and go. They've been in the middle of the fire at the center of the earth. They've seen meteorites come crashing down. They've seen water come and cover the land. They've seen the water go away again. So your problems are minuscule, you know.
Well, see, and I just thought it was, you know, based on different rock properties and not based on rock, you know, all rocks collectively, but I could see that. You know, that they would just be kind of a global thing. Yeah.
Right. Individual stones have very different personalities, again. A ruby has a very different personality from a piece of hematite or a piece of lead, you know, as you know. Mm-hmm. But they're all millions of years old. That's their perspective.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, we already covered that.
Where are we going?
I'm sitting here looking
this?
I'm looking on my list. It's like, well, we already talked about that. Well, we already talked about that. I mean, because, you know, your whole statement, I'll have to say, the statement that, like, if you're not, like, Judeo-Christian, you're a pagan. I'm like, okay, well, that's half the interview that I got written down. So I don't know. Well, we're going to go somewhere. Let's talk about, because one of the things that people, you know, even in my little exposure to, you know, like Wiccan or whatever, I mean, because you know, there's this whole thing about ritual. And of anything with earth-based religions, I am not a ritual girl. I mean, other than, like, you know, my own personal rituals, I don't do ritual. You know, but why do people use ritual, and what is the importance of it?
When you say ritual, what kind of, are you talking about group ritual as opposed to private ritual, personal ritual? What are you talking about when you say ritual?
You mean me personally, or
yeah,
the
what are you
question to
asking
you?
me about? Are you asking me about big group rituals? Are you
Both.
asking me about,
I don't know.
what are you asking?
Both, I guess. Okay, so when people think about paganism and, you know, and I'm just going to throw the words out there, and Wiccan and witchcraft, you know, they think about, like, a bunch of people standing around this giant tub, boil, toil, and trouble. I mean, that is their first impression. And I know from my own exposure that there are a lot of people that utilize ritual, you know, whether it's individual ritual or group. I'm assuming they would use both to facilitate something. And I guess I'm asking, what is the value of ritual and why do people use it?
Well, when people go to church, that's a ritual. People go to church every Sunday, so they do this big elaborate ritual where they go into the building and they sit down, and then these religious practitioners process down the aisle, and they go to the altar and they light the candles, and then they're singing and they say the magic words that they say every year at the same time. That is a ritual. That's a full-blown ritual. So why do people go to those rituals? They go.
I don't know. I don't go.
Okay, but that people do. They go for a sense of community. They go for a sense of hope. They go because they think they're going to connect with something sacred, or they hope they will. They go because they're going to hear some words that might help them in their life, in their daily struggles. You know, I'm sure there's other reasons why people go to rituals like that. Pagans are the same. I mean, that would be a group ritual. We have group seasonal rituals, and it's the same thing. It's wonderful that we have the same kind of ritual at the same time of year every year. It creates little signposts. You know, we call it the Wheel of the Year. It's nice to get together with your friends and with other practitioners and celebrate Halloween, or what we call Samhain, or celebrate Beltane or May Day. You know, Beltane is the beginning of summer, Samhain or Halloween is the beginning of winter. You know, those are just two. We have a lot of them. Those are just two of them. But it's exactly the same thing. It's a sense of coming together, reinforcing the community, celebrating the changes of nature, celebrating the Wheel of the Year. You know, and if there's a need, if there's some environmental focus that you want to have, a Christian might pray to God to help the environment. A pagan might do a little spell of some kind to help the environment, but it's exactly the same thing. I mean, when I look at prayer, when I look at Christian prayer, or Islamic prayer, or any kind of prayer, Jewish prayer, I don't care what it is, it's the same thing. They're asking for something. It could be something personal, it could be world peace, whatever it is. You're asking for something in a spiritual context. Pagans do exactly the same thing. And we have different gods and goddesses that we appeal to, that we have relationships with. And it's the same thing. It seems to be a human need that we have to come together as a tribe, you know, to petition for things and celebrate and eat together. Usually we have a meal afterwards. Kind of like if you go into a church service, they'll have coffee and cakes. We do the same thing afterwards. And then for private rituals, again, it's the same thing. It's a repetitive act that's very comforting somehow. If you have certain prayers that you do, or certain statues or gods and goddesses that you work with in the same way, and you light candles to them, and you have little images, little religious images that reinforce the way you're feeling. There's value to that, you know, and paganism is such a huge umbrella. There are groups that have no gods and goddesses. They just work directly with nature. So they would instead of giving thanks to a particular god or goddess for the harvest, you know, Demeter or Anu or Gaia, whatever, they would give thanks to the corn directly, or they would give thanks to the wheat directly, or give thanks to the oats, to the carrots. You know, they would just go directly to the spirits of nature and thank them. You know, but they still have a ritual. They still come together and have a Thanksgiving ritual like that. Does that make sense?
No, it makes sense. You know, and one of the things that I like to have this show do is kind of dispel, you know, bias that people have, you know, because, and even in my mind, you know, when I hear the term ritual and pagan, you know, it still conjures up in my mind, trying to do some kind of a spell or, doing these things in order to get X. But it doesn't sound like it's that way at all, that it's more entering into a celebration. I mean, I guess it could be.
Humans are humans. Humans are humans, right? And within Christianity, for example, you have the KKK. And within Islam, you have ISIS. You have groups that are wackadoodle, for lack of a better term. They take the basic teachings, they pervert them. Even Hitler was a Christian. I mean, he was surrounded by Christians. They called themselves Christians. These people were crazy. They were psychopaths. There are people like that, and they will take a religion, and they will pick and choose what they want from that religion and turn it into something crazy and nasty. Well, I mean, it's the same thing in paganism. You have young kids who think that they're going to get some kind of power by calling themselves a witch, and so they dye their hair black, and they put on their black nail polish, and they put on their eye makeup, and they try to look as scary as possible, and they're rebelling against their parents, and they might go do something stupid, but that doesn't represent paganism as a whole. I don't personally know anybody like that. I hear about it, in the media, on television or something, but I've never met anybody like that. I don't know people like that. Just as I know a lot of Christians, I've never met anyone who was in the KKK that I know of, but they're out there, So that, again, that's just human nature. If you take a large enough group of people, some of them are going to be crazy.
Only some?
Well, I mean, and then what happens?
Well, but it's also human nature to, take something that might be good and wholesome and try to distort it to their own self-serving needs.
Well, there's a lot of fear, okay? And if you look at the history of religions, anytime a new religion shows up, the old religion is terrified, and they demonize the new religion. And they say, oh, those people are the most demonic, horrible thing you've ever heard of, and if you hang out with them, you're going straight to hell, or whatever they say. That is, you see that over and over and over and over again. So now what's happening is paganism is growing. It's growing. It's one of the fastest growing religious traditions in the world, and it's coming back. There's a lot of reasons for that, but it's coming back. And that causes fear in people who are used to kind of, having their own way and being in control and doing things their way. And they get scared and they feel threatened.
But wasn't paganism around long before Judaism and Christianity? Although Judaism seems pretty pagan in my 2 cents of the word.
I got news for you. All the religions, if you go deep enough, they're very pagan. Even Christianity, all the Christian holidays, like Halloween, which is the old Celtic New Year, which is probably our most important ritual time because it's the festival of the ancestors and the dead, became All Saints' Day, All Souls' Day. The Christians took it over. Christmas was Saturnalia, which was a pagan festival when people would give each other gifts, and they would put little bits of holly. They would put the gift wrap it up in a cloth, and then put a little bit of a sprig of holly, and the master would give a gift to the slave, and it was a big party time. And guess what day it was? It was December 25th. It's like, so I mean, you can just go through the whole Christian calendar, and they basically took over all the pagan holidays. I think that Jehovah's Witnesses would argue with that. I think they don't like that kind of thing, but in general, Catholicism, definitely all their major holidays are pagan holidays.
And just think, Jesus wouldn't get like a holiday gift and a birthday present on his birthday. Because, it fell on a holiday.
Well,
sorry.
I think I think he was born in the spring. I think historically.
Oh, I know.
Yeah, they think he was born. But even that, I mean, there were the ancient Greeks celebrated the birth or the rebirth every year in the spring. The young god Dionysus was reborn, and they had a big festival. And they would sing this song. I kid you not. They would sing, "He is risen. He is risen."
Huh.
Does that sound familiar?
Yeah. Well, didn't they also celebrate Saturnalia?
That was the Romans. That's different. That was Romans. But yeah, what the church did was they took, every time they found a big festival that everybody was used to celebrating, they basically took it over. So all the religions have pagan roots, all of them, even Islam. Originally it was Allah and Allat, his consort. Okay? It was a male and a female deity. And in Judaism there was Asherah, who was a female goddess. Okay? They later, when the patriarchal ascendancy happened, they dropped those. But they, we all have more in common than we think, But anyway, but yeah, people get scared because there's this weird, ooky, spooky fantasy about witches, that witches fly through the air. There were people doing spells against each other, but in Christianity you have people who pray against people. There are whole churches that will pray against something. Okay, how is that any different? It's the same thing.
Well, no, because they're Christian. No, don't even get me started. Don't even get me started. If it was the Christmas show, see, then I'd be like, wow, because then it would be Christmas and I could, be mean. But...
Well, but there's no point in being mean. I think we all, especially when you look at the way the world is going, we all have to figure out how to get along, how to be more tolerant, not less tolerant. And it doesn't matter what kind of fundamentalist you are. If you're a fundamentalist Jew, if you're a fundamentalist Muslim, if you're a fundamentalist Christian, you are a problem. You're a problem to everybody else, because a fundamentalist thinks my way or the highway. And when they get really crazy, they say, my way or I will kill you. That's what they do. And so fundamentalism is the problem. It's no individual religion. Doesn't matter if you're pagan, if you're Christian, if you're Hindu, if you're Muslim. It doesn't matter. It's fundamentalism. That's the problem. Anybody who says, I have the one true and only faith, and anybody who doesn't follow my faith, is doomed. And they're not a worthy human being. They're not on the same level as I am. I'm more evolved. I'm closer to the divine. I'm closer to the gods or to God because of my religion. That's the problem right there.
Well, and it seems like, people explore religion because they want to feel closer to God or have more of a relationship with, the divine, with the world, with the universe, whatever it is that they believe, but they're looking to have this relationship. And it amazes me why we can't respect other people, and their beliefs.
Yeah, well, we humans have very puny little brains. And if we think that we understand, think about the size of the universe. We can't even think about it. It's so big that it's impossible to even wrap your head around it. So how could we, little puny humans, think that we have the corner on the truth? It's so much bigger than anything you can put in a book. It's so much bigger than anything you could put in a human head. So if you just understand that it's vast and you don't have all the answers, the only thing you can do is try to be kind and try to negotiate your life in such a way that you don't hurt other beings, whether they're plant, animal, mineral, human, just try to live your life as well as you can, and recognize that the same divine spark that created Jesus or Mary or Buddha or whoever, it's within every human, it's within every animal, it's within every inch of soil. It's everywhere, it's in the air. You can't, it's like there's this old Sufi story about a fish swimming around in the ocean going, "Where's the water? Where's the water?"
Okay, that's bad.
You can't get away from it. It's all sacred. Everything you look at, everything you touch, it's all sacred. And if you can start from that, it's not about transcending the earth. It's about being here,
Well, we have to be here for quite a while, and it would be nice if we could get along with each other. And it just seems like the more, as time moves forward, we get along less and less, which is really actually kind of scary to me, the direction that we're moving in, because there are so many people that want to embrace spirituality and a spiritual path, and that seems very evident to me. Yet we're not being more spiritually cohesive as a community.
Well, I've thought about that a lot. I think throughout history, humans have always been bad to each other. I mean, there's been a lot of wars. The Vikings would come and trash your town, or the other tribes would come over the hill and they would steal your cows, or the Catholics would burn the Protestants, and the Protestants would burn the Catholics, and there's always something like that going on. So the only thing that I can do, and the only thing that anybody can do who thinks about this stuff, is there always has to be a voice. In the midst of the worst war, whether it was World War II in the concentration camps, or, now when we have, it seems like we're back in the Crusades again, but in the middle of the craziness, there always have to be voices, no matter how hopeless it sounds, reminding people that doing violence to other people is not the way. There's nothing glorious about war. I mean, I'm so proud of Obama that he is a reticent warrior. He doesn't want to go to war. He goes to war because he's forced to. I'm proud of him. I think that's great. That's the proper attitude to have towards war. It is not a good thing, and you do everything in your power, and you try to think your way through it, and you try to think of every possible alternative not to go to war, And then if your back is against the wall, I guess sometimes you have to, but there's nothing glorious about war. There's nothing righteous about war. There's nothing wonderful about guns. All this stuff. There have to be voices that remind people, that we're all in this together. And that includes the animals and the plants and the trees and the water. Back in ancient Egypt, polluting the water was punishable by death. Because if you polluted the water, then the people downstream were going to die because of your actions. And yet in our culture, we cheerfully pollute the water. We think nothing of it. We're so used to having polluted water, you wouldn't think of drinking out of a river, because you would think, oh, it's polluted, right? But they worked really hard to make sure that their water wasn't polluted. Those are things we've forgotten. We pollute the air, we pollute the water, we pollute the soil. We even pollute the fire. We throw things into fire that we shouldn't. We burn things that we shouldn't. If you can see the divinity within all creation, then you stop doing that kind of thing. Or at least you think really long and hard before you would do something like that.
Yeah.
Hello?
Yeah. Well, I had somebody, they were trying to figure out who they're confused in the chat room, so I was trying to get them squared away. Sorry.
Oh, what are they? Oh, they're confused because okay. Does anybody have a question?
Yes, they did. But you know what? Let's go to break right now. We will come back with the question.
Okay.
So because it is that time. So
Good.
All right. So I'm Dr. Rita Louise. We are here talking to Evert Hopman about her book, Being Pagan. Her webpage is EllenEvertHopman.com, and we'll be back after these words from our
You're listening to IRN, the Inception Radio Network, Chicago, Illinois.
Are you looking for a cure for boredom? Never worry. IRN's new interactive website introduces a number of ways to pass time while you listen to your favorite show. Choose anything from the IRN chat lounge, the game lounge, video lounge, or the mood lounge. These fun, exciting features let you chat in real time with fellow listeners, view live skywatches, play daily posted online games, or pick a show based on topic. The choices are endless. Use your time wisely, keeping it all on IRN.
Who were the gods of antiquity? They've been described as the forces of nature, levels of consciousness, and aspects of our psyche. Stories that depict their incredible weapons, their flying machines, and their amazing adventures are characterized as being the product of our ancestors' fanciful imaginations. But what if the tales of the gods are true? Did the writers, chroniclers, and scribes of our distant past actually document a realistic view of our origin? My latest book, Man-Made, The Chronicles of Our Extraterrestrial Gods, looks at our most ancient legends. Learn of the torrid romances, elaborate plots, violent scandals, and conspiracies that played out in antiquity. Find out the role the gods played in the life and culture we have today. If you want to find out the truth of who we are and where we come from, order your copy of Man-Made today. For more information, go to www.manmadethechronicles.com. That's www.manmadethechronicles.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Remember, you can take your Inception Radio shows on the go. Just download the Inception Radio Network app for your iPhone, iPad, or Android smartphones and access live shows, past shows, guest lineups, and much more. Just visit the iTunes Store or the Google Play Marketplace and download it today for free.
Move past the crossroads in your life and discover alternative solutions to your deepest concerns at soulhealer.com. So whether it's a physical problem, an emotional issue, a question about work, or troubles in your relationships, naturopath and medical intuitive Dr. Rita Louise can help you. Bring peace, harmony, and health back into your life. Schedule a session today. Visit soulhealer.com right away and live the life you've been dreaming of.
You didn't forget what's coming up tonight, did you? Hi, Inception Radio Network listeners. This is Amanda. Never miss that interview you were looking forward to or the show on your favorite topic. Follow IRN on Twitter, I_R_N, and get reminders about the evening's live shows as well as fun and important updates throughout the week. That's I_R_N, and never miss a great show again.
We only have a couple of seconds before we have to get back to the show, and I want to tell you how you can jumpstart your intuition today. Using my free 50-page introductory guide filled with simple, revolutionary, and proven techniques, you can ignite your intuition and tap into your inner wisdom, all from the comfort of your own home. The Institute of Applied Energetics is the leader in online home study instruction for those interested in becoming a certified medical intuitive, intuitive counselor, or energy medicine practitioner. Now is the time to transform your life and take it to a completely new level. Discover who you are and how you work. Open the door to the world of intuition, health, and healing. You can jumpstart your intuition right away by going to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and downloading our free guide. Get the opportunity of a lifetime and live the life you deserve. Download your free Jumpstart Your Intuition guide today at www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com and begin living a life filled with passion and purpose.
Don't have a computer? Is your internet connection down? Don't worry. Use your trusty cell phone or landline and call into our listen line at 401-283-6700 to listen to the Inception Radio Network 24/7. Again, that call-in number is 401-283-6700. For the Inception Radio Network, I am MJ.
Go deep inside yourself and venture into the realm of the unconscious mind with my Meditating on the Kabbalah guided imagery audio CDs. Discover who you are and what you want in life. Meditating on the Kabbalah can help you to open, clear, and revitalize the energetic pathways of your subtle being. They will support you in your spiritual quest by helping you to access the profound insights and inner guidance you need as you work in alignment with your highest good. Let them help you to release negative thoughts and emotions and clear away any limitations that may be keeping you from experiencing your full potential. Walk down the path to health, healing, understanding, and enlightenment with Meditating on the Kabbalah. Order your copy today at www.soulhealer.com. That's right, that's www.soulhealer.com.
Hello, Inception Radio Network. Would you like your favorite show to be played again live on air? Well, now the choice is in your hands with IRN's live request portal, an easy way to request your favorite show with a simple click. IRN's live request portal now gives you exclusive access to all of the shows. How easy is it? Simply type a show name or a guest name, click request, even write a dedication message, and that's it. Try it now. Simply visit InceptionRadioNetwork.com, click on the live request tab under the show menu. Now playing your favorite show is just a mouse click away.
And now back to Just Energy Radio with Dr. Rita Louise.
And welcome back to Just Energy Radio. I'm your host, Dr. Rita Louise, and thank you all for staying tuned to the second hour of the show. This hour of Just Energy Radio is brought to you by the Institute of Applied Energetics, where you can jumpstart your intuition today by downloading our free 50-page guide. Go to www.appliedenergeticsinstitute.com. Okay, so Ellen, so we're here talking with Ellen Evert Hopman about her book. It's on the other side of the paper.
Being a Pagan.
Being a Pagan. It's on the other side of the paper. Her website is elleneverthopman.com. Ellen, there was a question in the chat room, and this was from Lorraine, and her question was, what crystal would be your recommendation to complement a flower garden in a cold region?
Wow. That is a great question. Well, gee whiz. I don't know how cold she means. Couple of things. If you're trying to attract fairies, I'm not sure what you're trying to do, but the fairies love the color blue. I can tell you that right off the bat. And if she wants to know more about fairies, I can talk about that. But I like to have blue crystals around the garden, and I also try to have blue flowers because that's what the fairies like. And then I will tell you, if you're interested in crystals, that my second novel, which we haven't really talked about my novels, but I have a novel called The Druid Isle. It's my second novel in a trilogy, but that one in particular, it's about Druid trainings, and each training has a specific crystal that goes with it. So if you're interested in crystals, you can actually do the initiations, and there's, like amethyst, clear quartz, turquoise, so on, that go with the specific Druidic initiation. So I don't know if that answered her question. Because I'm not sure exactly what she's trying to do in the garden.
Well, I'm sure she'll ask a follow-up. The people in the chat room are definitely not shy. So
okay.
And you're talking about fairies, and actually I had an email from Tiffany, and it was really interesting because this came in today. And so Tiffany asked me, do you have any past shows on fairies, or will you in the future? I'm having a hard time finding specifics on blue fairies. There was one in my bedroom a few nights ago. It looked like a blue orb, but it had batting little wings and kept bouncing off the walls. Will you find a special guest to talk about them on your show? Please.
Wow.
Thank you for your time. Love your show,
Oh,
Tiffany.
Interesting. Okay, now I have not seen. I tend to hear them more than see them. Okay, I've heard the fairies singing, and I've heard that a couple of times. The loudest was when I was in an old-growth forest in western Massachusetts doing a fast, and I could hear them clear as day. It was like this gorgeous three-part harmony that just went on and on and on in a language that I didn't understand. It was crystal clear, and I'm told by musicians that three-part harmony is absolutely the hardest thing to do, and that's what they do because they've had a lot of time to practice. You know, they've had thousands of years to practice. I've never seen a blue fairy, but I have seen something blue, and I thought it was an angel. It was like a blue, kind of like an orb, but it was elongated, and then it had gold around that. And the sense that I had was that it was an angel. It was angelic.
So what would be the difference between an angel and a fairy?
Yeah, I knew you were going to say that.
I knew you knew I was going to say that.
Because in the old Scottish tradition, they teach that the fairies were actually angels who fell to the earth. And that's what they are. They're the ones who fell out of heaven, and they were following Lucifer. Lucifer was a bright light. He wasn't this red guy with horns and a pitchfork. That had nothing to do with it. Okay, that came much later. Lucifer was this bright light, and Lucifer was challenging God, basically saying, you know, I'm not content to be in the sky, you know, doing whatever the other angels do. You know, I'm too smart for that. You know, and so God kicked him out of heaven. So the story goes. Well, in Scottish tradition, they say all the angels that fell, the fallen angels that fell, they fell into the earth and they became the fairies. And that's why the fairies live under the ground. And that's called the she realm in Celtic tradition.
Cool.
Yeah,
okay, so... Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say it's also water. It's the realm of water. Water. The way they envisioned the world, they felt that there was water. Because if you dig down, you hit water, right? Especially if you're in Ireland. You dig down a few feet, there's water. So they visualized that there was water, a realm of water under the ground. And that's where the ancestors and the fairies are.
Interesting. Okay, so this is a question from Marco. And he put, seriously, this is my question after the question, but I get it. Is the Earth alive, and are we just parasites on it?
Yes, the Earth is alive, and we are part of the Earth. There's really no separation. And we're a little out of control right now. I mean, I understand the question, because right now we're like a species that has left its, you know, every species has a niche. If you study ecology or in environmentalism, every species has a function. We've gone way beyond the bounds of where we're supposed to be. So I understand. It's a he, right? Is it a he? Marco, yeah. I understand where that's coming from, but we are also part of the Earth. So the Earth, it may be waking up. You know, just like a human who's eating ho-hos and Coca-Cola and, you know, really bad junk food, and then they realize, uh-oh, this is making me sick, and then they change their way of living, and they start doing yoga, and they eat vegetables, you know. Maybe that's what's happening to the Earth. Those of us who are becoming conscious and realizing that what humans are doing is not sustainable, that is the Earth itself waking up that something is not right here. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. I remember years ago, I had gone camping in Big Sur, and they had, which I didn't realize it when we went camping, but I guess I knew sort of that they had a big fire like the year before, and so there was a group of us. And they were like, "Hey, let's go look at where the fire was," and so we go walk over there. And I'm standing kind of on this hilltop looking down, and it was just all burned up, and all I kept hearing was, "Leave me alone. Leave me alone." I mean, the earth just wanted people to just go away and let her heal. It was just so sad, and I just wanted to go.
Not only that, but fires are actually necessary. It turns out that, the giant sequoias, the redwoods that have been around for 5,000 years, if a big fire goes through, and you can see it if you hang out with the redwoods, you'll see that the bottom of the trees is often burned because they withstand a fire. They're designed to withstand a fire. The fire goes through, it burns out the underbrush, and then seedlings can come up because there's a cleared area, and now there's enough light so that new growth can occur. Here in New England, where I am, the Indians understood this, and they would regularly burn the forest. Now we don't allow that. So what happens? Lyme disease. Lyme disease happens because the ticks are proliferating because the undergrowth in the forests is never burned away. If you constantly burn the understory, then you have nothing but grass, and the grass feeds the deer, so you have more deer, you have more game, more food to eat, and the ticks can't, it kills off all the ticks, and it kills off the insects. You don't have to spray things with Raid and, toxic chemicals. You just burn. And so a fire can actually be exactly what a forest needs. And there's certain trees that can't reproduce at all unless their cones go through a fire. And then the cones open and release their seeds.
Well, and it just seemed like that area just wanted to heal and be left alone and not have people tromping all on it.
Oh, well,
and it just really wanted its space. I mean, basically it wanted its space, and people could not hear the cries and let her just be. It was so sad.
Well, yeah, I think that's what Marco meant when he asked about, are we parasites, because we're killing off the animals. Half the animals are gone now. That came out in the news recently. Since 1970, half the animals on the planet are gone now. That's just in the last 40 years. We've killed off half the animals on the planet. Yeah, I mean, more and more people are choosing not to have children. People are taking steps, but, we have a ways to go yet. And we are part of nature. We are. And we have to get our act together.
So this is a question from Carol, and she brings up the concept of the superstition on knocking on wood. And her comment was, it came from a Druid practice of knocking on trees as they entered a forest to assure safe passage. Is that true?
That's interesting. I don't know. I don't remember reading about that, but it makes sense because, there's a spirit, for example, that lives in an oak tree. It's called Muchnach Nadrus, which is the spirit of the oak. And it's when I've seen that spirit, it's like this little man. He's got a beard, and the oak tree. You can travel, if you've ever done shamanic work, you can travel down through the roots to the underworld. You can travel up through the branches to the sky world. So when you're knocking on the wood, you're literally announcing yourself to the spirits. You're saying, I'm here, and you're also waking them up. It just kind of, when I go into a forest, I like to pause. I like to stop right at the entrance to the forest. And sometimes there's a large stone, and I'll make an offering to the stone because the stone is a guardian. Sometimes, I do the same thing when I enter a stone circle. If I go into some place like Stonehenge or the Rollright Stones, or we have stone circles here in Western Mass, I will touch each stone with my hand as a way of greeting the spirit that is in the stone. And it's just a way of announcing yourself and saying, I'm here. I know that you're there. You know that I'm here. We're aware of each other. I'm not an unconscious, blundering human who's just going to go tromping into the forest and shoot something. I'm an aware, sentient being. I'm going to be very respectful. I know that when I go into the woods, I'm entering into somebody's living room, literally. I'm going into their home. And that's the way I would think of it. But there's another aspect also, which is that there's certain woods, there's certain trees that are inherently protective, like the rowan or the mountain ash. Again, I'm thinking of Scottish tradition again, but the rowan, there's certain trees that are very magically protective. And if you carry a piece of rowan, or if you invoke the rowan, or if you touch the rowan, it's a way of shielding and protecting yourself.
I never even heard of that tree.
It's mountain ash.
Oh, mountain ash.
Yeah, American mountain ash or European mountain ash. The rowan is the old Scottish name for it, rowan tree. But it's so magically protective that when they built a house, they would always put a piece of rowan wood in the chimney as they were building the chimney, and that was to protect the house from being struck by lightning or from burning down. They would hang branches of it over the entrance to the barn to protect the animals. They would tie it around the animal's neck or tie it to their tail to protect them from diseases. They would put it over the doorway so that people coming and going would be protected. They would put it in the baby's cradle, or hang it over the baby's cradle, or put it under the baby's cradle. They would plant one near the house. They even had a saying, "Woe to those with no rowan tree near." It was considered really important to have one somewhere on the property,
Well, see, now I'm going to have to ask. Like, do we got any mountain ash tree things in our yard?
Well, you should.
Well, and it could happen. I just, know the pecans because the squirrels keep throwing those nuts at us, and the dog. That's the funniest, when the squirrels throw the pecans at the dog and the cat. It is, because they just lay there. They're dumb, and, they get hit. But anyway, that's pretty funny. When we talk about paganism in a more Celtic kind of way, what draws people in? There's what we see on TV and the misnomers that are put out there. But what is it that makes people like yourself feel like that's the path that you want to go down? Are you just a rebel rouser?
Well, honestly, again, everybody's different. Some people are, you really do meet people who are in rebellion, against, they were raised Catholic and they're recovering Catholics, or they were raised Baptist or whatever, and they're trying to recover from their childhood. I was not burdened with any of that. My parents, I had a very strange upbringing because I went to a Catholic nursery school. I went to an American public school. Then we went back to Europe. I went to a school that was Catholic and Spanish in the morning, and German and Protestant in the afternoon. So I do speak Spanish and German. Then they sent me to a Quaker school where I learned...
that would be interesting.
Yeah. Then they sent me to the Putney School, which was founded by a communist. Then I finished up I went to a American military school because I went back to Germany and went to an American military school. So, there was no religion that I could point to and say, oh my God, I'm being oppressed, I have to rebel. I wasn't rebelling against anything. I just had a memory, I guess, a childhood memory of the Celts. And I also had a profound love of nature. And so I gravitated towards paganism because it was a nature religion. And other people have a completely different experience. They're trying to break away from, something that they were raised as. So they're actually rebelling against something. I never had that. But everybody's different. And some people have a very deep feeling about their ancestors. Some people have Scottish heritage or Irish heritage or even French or German heritage or Austrian heritage or whatever it is, and they look back to their ancestors and they realize that their deep ancestors were not Christian. And then all of a sudden they find that they're really into that. Maybe they had Viking ancestors, and then they go into it for that reason. And I think that's particularly true for Americans. I think a lot of Americans are, because this society is so mixed, there are people that are trying really hard to find their roots and, who they are and where they came from, and so that's how they end up being a pagan, especially a Druid or a Celtic pagan, because they look back at their ancestry. So it's different for everybody.
Well, and it seems like over the, I don't know, last 20 or 30 years, I don't really want to quantify it, that there are more and more people looking at this spiritual tradition as a path that they want to follow. Especially like in Texas, which I found very interesting. There is a huge pagan community. Huge.
Oh yeah, it's everywhere. It's everywhere. We're hiding in plain sight. People still think of us. A lot of people think of us as some strange, kooky minority, but we're not. We're everywhere. I mean, if you knew, every person listening to this probably has a pagan neighbor or a pagan coworker. I mean, we're everywhere. I like to say we're hiding in plain sight. And it's because officially we don't exist. It's kind of like mountain lions here in Massachusetts. People kept seeing mountain lions. And then the fish and wildlife people would say, oh no, there's no mountain lions in Massachusetts. And people kept seeing them. And I mean, I moved here in 1986, and it wasn't until last year that some scientist finally got a photograph of a mountain lion, not just a few miles from my house. And so now they have to go, yep, there's mountain lions. But everybody knew there were mountain lions.
It's like Bigfoot.
Well, we knew there were mountain lions. Everybody knew it, but the official dogma was there are no mountain lions. But it's the same thing with pagans, it's a minority. They're kooky. They don't exist, really. And we're everywhere. We're everywhere.
Okay, so Lorraine has another question, and she wants to know, the pagan ways are very empowering for women. Is the bulk of the increase of people following women, or are men drawn in also?
It depends what tradition you're looking at. There are a lot of witchcraft traditions that are predominantly female, I think. There's some that are exclusively female, but that's rare. And then a lot of them are predominantly female because it's one of the few religions that allows women to be full-fledged priests, or priestesses. Other religions usually don't allow that. Judaism has started to do that, Reformed Judaism, and then there's some Protestant female clergy, but, paganism has very enthusiastically embraced female clergy, and that's because we have goddesses, and the goddesses are just as important as the gods. For some people, even more important than the gods, because some people say that there's the goddess and that all the gods and goddesses came out of the goddess, But for Druids, it's about 50-50. we tend to be about 50% male and female. And there's still more male leaders, which is kind of curious and somewhat upsetting. Even though it's 50-50, there's still more men in leadership positions. But women have tried and succeeded. I'm one of them, with much opposition, I must say. But women do attain positions of leadership within Druidism. But boy, it's like politics. It's rough. That's probably why most women don't want to do it. But anyway.
That's why they go to those girl ones. And this is from Bill. Is there any movement to try to make this a recognized religion?
To try to make it a recognized religion.
Isn't paganism identified as a real religion?
Yeah.
I mean, I know that you can... Okay, that's what I thought, but I figured I would pose the question anyway.
Recognized by whom? The Pope? There was actually a campaign. It was called the Papal Apology Project, which you can Google. And it was very interesting because this was the very first international pagan effort where pagan leaders from all around the world came together, and we petitioned the Pope. I was one of them. And we actually wrote a letter to the Pope, and we asked for an apology for all the quote-unquote witches who were burned, and all the people in the Inquisition who suffered. But we didn't get the apology, of course. So the Pope doesn't recognize us, or hasn't. Maybe Francis will come through. He's different. He's amazing, but we really like Francis, I think. But even the Unitarian Church has a covenant of Unitarian Universalist pagans now. I'm not sure what they mean by officially recognized religion. I'm not sure what they mean by that.
Well, know that if you're in the military and you're pagan, that you can actually have like a pagan marker put on your tombstone. I don't know what that would look like. Yeah,
it took 9 years. It took 9 years and the threat of a lawsuit because George Bush famously said that witchcraft was not a religion. That was his pronouncement. But it took 9 years of effort, and then the VA kept changing its rules, even though they've accepted, if you look at the VA accepted symbols, I don't know how many there are, 50, 60. Everybody has a symbol, including the atheists, but they would not accept the pentagram because they would not accept that it was a religion. So then there was the threat of a lawsuit because you can't do that in America. And the VA finally said, well, if somebody dies, if a soldier dies and they or their family asks for the pentagram to be on their military marker, then we'll do it. So we had to wait till somebody died and had filled out all the paperwork, and then that finally happened, and they still were opposed to it, and then there was the threat of the lawsuit, and then finally they had to give in. Now we're going through the same thing with Druids. We did. We had a vote, and this was years ago. We went to all the Druid orders, and we had a number of different symbols. And we said, "Which symbol would you want?" And everybody voted, and they came up with one symbol. And we filled out all the paperwork. We sent it to the VA, and they hemmed and hawed, and then they changed their rules again. And then they said, "Well, until you have a deceased Druid veteran where they or their family or their clergy person have requested that symbol, we're not going to do anything." So we have a lot of Druid vets, including people who've seen active service, but we haven't yet had a deceased Druid vet who filled out the correct paperwork and they or their family or their clergy asked for the Druid symbol. So that's what we're waiting for. It's sad, but that's what... So as soon as that happens, then we can move forward with the Druid symbol.
See, if I had known that, because my husband passed away, and he would have so taken any kind of Druid wizard symbol to put on his grave, because I wouldn't put any of the symbols that they had on his marker.
Well, if you're his family member, so you can request it. You could request the pentagram.
I wouldn't put the pentagram. We'll have to talk. You'll have to send me the symbol.
We'll talk.
We'll talk. Yeah, no, he wouldn't have. He would. Oh God, his family would have a heart attack if I put a pentagram on there. That was the kindest thing that I didn't do. But I wasn't going to put a cross on there. But no, his nickname was Wizard Skullbone. So I think putting a Druid symbol on there would be very appropriate.
Okay. Well, we'll email about that. We'll
email.
Exactly who to contact. Yeah.
Okay. But why is the pentagram associated? You know, the pentagram just has such a bad rap in the first place. You know, why is it associated with paganism? And wouldn't it be maybe better if they got like a different symbol so that people don't think that they're devil worshippers because of the pentagram thing?
The pentagram is a star that's right side up. The satanic star is an upside down star where the horns are up. So first of all, people are not looking very carefully. And by the way, this is really confusing, but some of the nicest people I know are Satanists. It's really confusing. They just believe in total, self-reliance and free will and all that kind of stuff. And there was one guy who was a Satanist who actually was a coworker of mine, and he used to bring a teddy bear to work, which I found incredibly confusing. But anyway, yeah, the satanic star has the points up like horns. The pentagram doesn't. It just looks like a star with one point at the top and then the two arms and then the two legs coming down. That's Leonardo da Vinci used that symbol, the symbol of the perfect man. Remember when he had made the famous drawing, the man with the arms stretched out and the two legs? That's a pentagram. Mm-hmm. And it symbolizes earth, air, fire, and water, and the perfected human.
So not any like devil.
No, it has nothing to do with that.
Satan or any of that stuff.
Well, pagan, yes. Devil, no. First of all, the devil is a Judeo-Christian deity. Pagans don't have anything to do with the devil. We don't worship the devil. We don't have anything to do with the devil. That is a Judeo-Christian fantasy about us. The devil, or shaitan for the Muslims, that's their thing. It has nothing to do with us. What Satanism, or the Church of Satan, does is they like to take anything. If it's a cross, they turn it upside down. That's a symbol of I don't want to say disrespect. For some of them, it's disrespect. For some of them, they're just saying we're beyond all that. They take the Wiccan pentacle or the pentagram and they turn it upside down, just like they do with the cross, because they're saying we're not part of that either, and we're going to turn it upside down and disrespect it. Has nothing to do with us. And in fact, we think of Satanism as a Christian sect because they're so fascinated with the devil, and the devil is a Judeo-Christian god. He's a Judeo-Christian deity, has nothing to do with earth-worshipping pagans, This is complicated, isn't it?
No, it's really good because, there's so many people that have these beliefs that aren't really true.
Yeah, it's based on fear and propaganda. The devil
a lot of propaganda.
Yeah, the devil is a Judeo-Christian thing. Has nothing to do with us. That's all you have to know.
Yeah. So a little earlier you were mentioning about the different holidays, and we have Halloween coming up, and I know that that's a big pagan holiday. Can you go into a little bit of detail about what that holiday symbolizes, where it comes from, and the importance of it in your tradition?
Well, we call it Samhain. That's the old Celtic term, not Samhain. Drives us crazy when people call it that. It's called Samhain. It's the Celtic New Year. It's the beginning. For the Celts, the year only had two seasons. You had winter and you had summer. So Samhain, or Halloween, is the beginning of the dark half of the year, and Beltane, or Bealtaine, or May Day, is the beginning of the light half of the year. And they're both equally important, and they were both spirit nights. They were both times when the walls between the worlds were very thin. It was very easy for the fairies and the spirits and the ancestors to cross over. It was a really good time to communicate with the dead, to honor the dead. What happened with Beltane, or Bealtaine, or May Day, was in the 1950s, the Russians, and I guess they still do, the Russians have this big May Day parade. So I still remember when I went to kindergarten, and it would have been, 1959 or something. I remember that we made May baskets, and public schools used to celebrate May Day. But because of the Cold War and because of the Russian military parades, they officially squashed May Day, and they said you will not celebrate it anymore. So it's a banned holiday in this country. But up until the late 1950s, just like we celebrate Halloween, we were also celebrating May Day. And if you think of those, the reason that the walls are thin between the worlds is because it's a time of change. When you're moving from summer into winter, it's a time of chaos because the season is changing. You know how people tend to get sick when the weather changes? It's because everything's changing, and your body is reacting to that, and people tend to get colds at that time, So at Samhain, or Halloween, what's going on is the vegetation is dying. The animals are coming down from the hills. In the old days, the cows were taken out. At May Day is when you took the cows up to the hills for their summer pasture, and at Halloween or Samhain is when the cows came down. And that's a natural cycle. If you went to Yellowstone, for example, or Yosemite, and you saw the buffalo, wherever the buffalo are, the buffalo would do the same thing. In the summer, they go up the hills, and in the winter, they come down to the valley. So that's just a cycle that's been going on for millions of years. But that was a way of officially marking that. And when the cows came down at Halloween, the cows would come down from the hills, and then you had to figure out how much food you had to get the cows through the winter. And you either had enough hay stored, or they would actually use tree leaves in the barn for the winter. And if you didn't have enough food for the cows to get them through the winter, then you had to start slaughtering some of the cows. And then you would make them into sausages. So the vegetation is dying because of the cold weather. The cows are dying because you're making them into sausages. The year is turning dark. People are going within. They're going into themselves because they're going into the house. They're not running around outside anymore. And they start to think about their own issues and their own past and their own ancestors. And that's what you do at Halloween. And then, as I mentioned before, the Christians took that over. It became the Day of the Dead, All Saints' Day. They basically just took it over. And then May Day is the opposite. May Day is when you have your cows and you get ready to go up into the hills, and you have a ceremony, and you do a purification ritual where you have two fires, and they have to be close enough together that a white cow going through them will have her fur tinged brown, and all the cows get passed between these two ritual fires, and they go up into the hills, and the women and the children follow the cows, and that's where they spend the summer, up there in the hills. And those are the two most important festivals.
But see, that doesn't sound like spooky or anything bad is going on.
I'm sorry to disappoint you. Yeah, I mean...
I'm just being your average American, okay?
Yeah, okay. Well, I mean, there's a lot of deep Indo-European symbolism here. I mean, the reason you pass the cow through the two ritual fires is because the cow is a lunar animal. It's filled with sacred liquid, which in the Hindu tradition or the Vedic tradition is called soma. We call it milk, and you take this watery lunar animal and you pass it between two fires. And in ancient thinking, the Celts believed that the universe was made of fire and water. In Scandinavia, they said fire and ice, but it was the same idea. So when you bring fire and water together, it creates magic. You have the greatest potential for magic. So that's an example of a magical spell. Isn't that scary?
That's so scary. Well, but it also makes me think of, in a lot of cultures, fire is used for ritual purification, and it would make the cow be cleansed and ritually pure and sacred.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
And
so that's pretty cool.
That's definitely part of it. And then at Lunasa, which is the beginning of the harvest, which is it's actually a 3-week festival. It goes from the last week of July through the first 2 weeks of August, anywhere in there. You take horses, and horses are solar animals. They're creatures of fire. Remember, the cow is a creature of water. The horse is a creature of fire. At Lunasa, you take the fiery horse, and you drive your horses through water. You drive them across a river or through a pond. They need to be ritually passed through water. But it's the same idea, that you have fire and water coming together. That's what happens. And you also have horse racing. That was a big thing at that time.
I just find it interesting that cultures around the world all celebrate some kind of holiday. I'm not even going to use holiday, acknowledgement of the, of autumn, of the winter equinox, of the spring equinox, of these cycles of time and cycles of the calendar. And it always makes me wonder, well, where the heck did we come up with this? And why did we pay attention and all of this stuff? And it's things, and the memory of it has come down to us today. And we don't even think about that.
Well, because they were honoring the earth. The solstices and equinoxes, you're honoring the sky. You're honoring the fire in the sky. You're honoring the sun, the moon, the position of the sun, and so on. That's a sky festival. And then for Halloween and May Day and Imbolc, which is in February, and Lunasa, which is in August, you're honoring the earth. So it goes back to what I was saying earlier, that it's all sacred. Everything you look at, whether it's the moon, the sun, the grain, the cows, the horses, the people, it's all sacred. And there's no idea that, I need to leave this earth. I have to I'm such a bad person. My goal is to leave here and go to the sky god. That's just a completely different perspective. And it's something that, and this is going to get me in trouble, but that whole perspective, it's a desert perspective where you have a very harsh sun, a very harsh land, and it can kill you. If you go out in the desert, you'll die. You'll roast to death. It's just a harsh, harsh environment. And a religion that was born out of that was brought to Western Europe, where we had unbroken forests. We had oak forest from the Caucasus Mountains all the way to the west coast of France was unbroken oak forest. Britain, Ireland, everywhere was just oak, oak, oak everywhere. So we were living in the forests. We had lots of food. We had acorns. We had all kinds of animals. We had lots of water. We never had to think about that. We had shade. We weren't going to burn to a crisp. We had lots of firewood. That was our existence. And then this harsh Middle Eastern religion was brought in. And that's all my novels.
And they took over.
That. Pardon?
And they took over.
Yeah, they did. And now they're starting to wane. And there's there's still problems because the Muslims and the Christians, and they're all fighting each other, but it's really sad. But
But the saddest part is there's the religious part, but then there's the whole psychological belief, materialism that seems to come with that whole cultural element, that whole religious cultural element that has extended the boundaries of just practitioners of the faith.
Well, again, I think it goes back to the fact that those religions were born in the desert where you had to fight incredibly hard to survive. And so it's written into the Bible, that you're supposed to make the land fruitful. You're supposed to struggle with the land and control it and be a steward of it and master it, because it was so hard. And then,
but actually, it really doesn't say that. God gives Adam dominion over the land, but as a steward.
Over the land.
But as a steward, not as a conqueror.
Yeah, but we don't have a right to dominion over the land. We're part of the land. We are part of it. People lived for millions of years as part of the landscape. They didn't try to have dominion over anything. They lived within the landscape. They moved from camp to camp. They didn't trash the place. They moved because they knew that if they stayed in one place too long, they would kill off all the animals and then they would starve. And they figured that out. So they would stay a certain amount of time in one place, and then they would move to another place. And they had a regular round of territory, and they would keep moving, because they understood how the whole thing worked. And nobody had this idea, I'm going to have dominion over this land, That's the problem right there. That's the kernel of the problem.
But they also aren't fulfilling their role of stewardship. Like, I feel like I have stewardship over my little garden. I go, I talk to them, I take care of my babies, talk to the chickens, talk to the nuggets. You know what I mean? Because they're mine.
Implies that you're going to leave it better than you found it, that you're going to make it healthy. Yeah, we're not doing that. We're killing things off. That's true. And that's what I'm saying. I think we're at a point now where we have to learn. We're like babies. We're like babies who, we're shitting on our mother. We're just shitting and shitting.
Well, we didn't even do that. It's like we're regressing in some ways.
Well, some of us are. Don't get me started. That's a political discussion.
I know. We only have like 5 minutes, so. Okay, let's see. I'm just looking at my list to see if there is anything that we didn't talk about, but not really.
But what do your guides say? Do your guides have anything to say about all this?
Well, they think you're a hoot, and I, with everything that's gone on with the show today and the broadcast, I'm a little off my game. Oh, plus I didn't get a copy of your book, so I'm a little off my game with this whole thing, and I'm just so grateful that you're putting up with me and my little smart ass comments. Ooh, I didn't say that. That was French. That means bouquet. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I had no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, no, I just am glad to hear this. I had a guy who does voodoo come on. I mean, he's been on a couple of times before, and we got into the whole conversation about curses and spells and possession and all of these, things that people associate with voodoo to kind of give people an idea like, that really doesn't happen and it's really all Hollywood. And in talking to you, it sounds like much of the things that people in the West have been led to believe is really all Hollywood.
Well, and the church had a big, part in that too. During the Inquisition, they had lots of fantasies about witches and things like that. That went on, the witch hysteria. That went on for a couple of centuries, and that influenced a lot of people. But, it's all fantasy. It's not reality. We don't fly through the air. We can't blast your farm or what. I mean, we can't do those things. That's made up woo-woo stuff.
And it would just be so cool if you could. I'd want one of those brooms. They'd be selling them. They'd mass produce them in China.
If that stuff were true, every witch would be a multimillionaire, right?
Mm-hmm.
We'd all be living in castles and...
They'd always have the lottery numbers.
Right, exactly. No, we all work, I guarantee that everybody listening probably has a coworker who's a pagan. I guarantee it. We pay taxes, You
mean you can't conjure that up, just send them fake money or make them think they got their money?
Yeah, nope. Sorry.
Rats.
Nope.
I'm not converting. Man.
I know. What's the point, right?
But if somebody was interested in exploring that as a tradition, because they're resonating with this whole idea of communing more with the earth and that sense of fellowship, where would be a good place to send them? I mean, other than getting your Being a Pagan book, which is probably awesome.
Well, I actually have 10 books out right now. That's just one of them. But if people are interested in Druidism, I do have a Druid order. It's called Tribe of the Oak. And we teach online and in person. If people are interested, they can contact me. My name is Ellen, Ellen, Evert, V as in Victor, ERT, HOP as in Paul, MAN. EllenEvertHopman.com is my website. And you can write to me, and I can point you in different directions, seriously, if you want it. I mean, I can help you with Druid training. I can refer you to witches if you want that. I'm glad to help. There's a great website called Witchvox, WITCHVOX, witchvox.com, where I think it's the largest religious site on the internet right now. But it goes state by state, and you can see exactly which groups are in your state. And, pagan pride days and different things that go on in your state. You just put in where you live, and it'll tell you what's going on. So that's probably a really good place to start if you're into witchcraft, witchvox.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
Ellen, thank you so much for coming on the show and spending time with us and putting up with all the little technical problems we had at the beginning. But it turned out okay.
Well, I want to say thank you to everybody in the chat room. I hope they had a good time. And to everybody who is listening, I want to wish you a happy Halloween or Samhain. And don't forget to honor your ancestors. Just go outside and, make a little plate. I call it a spirit plate. Just make a plate of delicious food and leave it outside for your ancestors and for the fairies and let them know that it's for them on Halloween. It's very polite to do that. So
I'm laughing because it's like right, and then 5 seconds later the cats will be over there like.
Well, that's okay. That's okay. Just don't put chocolate because that's bad for dogs.
Nah, the dog doesn't stay outside. It's the cats. Anyway.
Yeah.
All right. I am going to let you go. Thank you so much again for coming on. And we will have to have you back in a more grounded state next time.
Okay. Well, thank you. My pleasure. And happy Halloween.
All right. Thanks. That's Ellen Evert Hopman. Her webpage is EllenEvertHopman.com. Her book is Being a Pagan. Check out all of her other books on her website. And next week, we're going to be speaking with Von Broschler about encounters with malevolent entities and other disembodied spirits. Until next time, I'm Dr. Rita Louise. You're listening to Just Energy Radio.
Join host Dr. Rita Louise each week at this time for Just Energy Radio. Point your browser to